Hey guys, this is Lucid. Welcome to another Dominions intervention video. This time we'll be looking at LA-Jomon. It is the final of the Yomi Shinuyama series, I guess. So the kind of Japanese-themed little demon nations. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty different than all the other ones. In fact, each of the ages of these kind of Japanese-themed nations are very different than one another. So and there's some commonalities too, of course, but let's get looking at it real quick. We're going to do a very quick national overview. You can see you have a ton of troops. We're not going to go ahead and talk about them all. You have a few things that are very notable for the nation. One is you have ninjas. And ninjas are very special because they can scale walls. And what that means is that they can enter and exit hostile castles unseen, even when they are completely closed up during sieges. So the thought behind most assassins is if they're not being sieged, then you can assassinate people inside forts. So if you had an assassin, and this was something I didn't know until kind of recently, like if I had an assassin, I could march it over Agartha and I could assassinate people inside his fort. However, if I put an army on top of Agartha, my assassin, which was on there the turn before, can no longer assassinate unless they have scale walls. And that is one of the pretty cool things about this. About this nation. Is they have ninjas. And so they can scale walls. Now, we'll talk about how to use that. But the basic idea is you have an army which you pop on top of a fort. And then you have a ninja squad which kills every single mage inside it. And then you go in and you kill an unbuffed army. And they can't even, if you have enough ninjas, they can't even ride out to fight you because you just kill everybody. Yeah. So that's obviously not bad. Yeah. So that is the ninja play. And this is good at all phases of the game. In the late game, you run into issues that stealthy units can still be nuked from, like, flames from the sky. Anyway, but you can deal with that by gearing them up, because you're going to need to gear them up anyway. We'll talk about ninja kits, because I think that's going to be an important part of this strategy. Next, we're not going to go through all the commanders. All right, look, you have commanders. You have these guys who can potentially roll a random. The only thing that's kind of eventful is if you get the 10... Well, we're not even talking about it. They're a holy 2. Too small a chance. These guys, the monks of the fivefold path, the nature ones can buff themselves up to nature 2 with teaching signs. But that's the only way you can use that. This as this nation, which is kind of very weird. And it would be special if you could like put that in communions and it would stack with other stuff, but really you can cast Power of the Spheres super easy, so why bother? Maybe there's some other stuff these guys can do, but yeah, I can't think of much. To cast Teaching Signs, you need Nature 1, Holy 1. Okay, the Shugenja, these guys come in a few varieties. Basically, you get cheap cross paths. They're good research monkeys, but in terms of combat power, they're not terribly great. Elemental paths are not terribly good at a low level, except maybe air. Maybe nature. But this guy sucks as a combat mage. And people are free to tell me otherwise, but you're watching my video, these are my opinions. The Omnioji, or however you say that, these guys are awesome. 145 is not expensive. 145 for a 4-path mage is very cheap. 145 for a 4-path mage, resistant to magic duel because they're Astral 2, and they get any of basically 5 paths as their... So basically, you can have... The only thing you don't have is Death and Blood, right? Because you already got Astral. Astral's built in, so you've got 6 out of the 8 paths with these guys. Why is that important? Well, they recruit anywhere, so this means you can have every single spell in a communion. Not bad. And at 145, you can just shit these guys out. Even better, they start with a little sidekick, which means they're assassin resistant, which is pretty nice. You know, a little assassin resistant. The only problem with this, and this is going to be important because there's a Pangea in the game, The only problem, of course, is that astral mages suck in assassinations generally. They'll cast like luck and body ethereal or whatever, and then they'll die. So sorry. If you give them like a nature, we'll talk about, we'll have a little thing on assassin protection later, but because I feel like this game is about to descend, if it hasn't already, into just assassin hell. So yeah, you've got that going for you. But anyway, these guys are slightly resistant, and they can put every single spell on your army. Just about. Next, we have the Master Shugenja, which is actually more expensive than this guy. He does not have Fortune Teller. Yeah, he's also a 4-path mage. But he's much less likely to be terribly useful. You can get, I mean, it's important to have some of these because you're going to get high, like you can get Earth to, okay. This guy right here is not really very likely to get 2 of any path, right? He's mostly going to be like astral and then 1 of 2 paths. This guy, he has a pretty good chance to get Earth or Nature too. And so that's of some value to the nation. The things that I'll point out is that in Earth 2, with Earth Boots, can do Army of Gold. And the Nature 2 with a Thistle Mace, or a Nature 2 doesn't even need a Thistle Mace. A Nature 2 can just do Mass Protection. Both of these are good if you don't want to bring a Communion. Like, if you have a small army, you want to put Army of Gold on, these guys can be okay for the job. If you have PD, you want to put Mass Protection on, these guys are okay for the job. So these guys do have some situational usefulness, but you have to consider about half of them, I think, are going to have maybe a little less. Probably, I don't know. It's probably, okay, what is it? It's 1 in 5. Okay, the chances are 2 in 5 of getting it. So what are the chances? It's 3 in 5 times 3 in 5, so it's 9 over... Wait 1 second. Yeah, it's 9 over 25 is your chance of basically getting no Earth 2s or Nature 2s. And anyway, that's basically, you can think of it like a little more than a third. So 2/3 of the time you'll get somebody that you can use. The other time you're going to get a complete shit mage, basically. Now there's some useful cross paths you'll get, so you would want those anyway, but that is a reason to potentially recruit these guys. But in general, these are not your go-to dudes. So that's the Master Shugenja. We've then got the Crab General, who's actually a big beefcake. He's got 15 built-in protection, so he's already got Stone Skin cast on himself. And he starts with 15 body armor. So these guys are actually very beefy. Especially if you fluff them and you give them like a little better armor, they can potentially thug. Like this guy with 2 Frostbrands will chew through a fair amount of PD. It's kind of cool. He has a 2-handed weapon and he has Krabby Claws. Very funny. Yeah. I mean, those guys are good. And then finally we have the Ryujin, which are pretty special. They're one of the cooler units in the game. Reasonably priced at $285. I'll just say it's a very reasonable price. They can shape change between this and a dragon. I think this is the lower HP form, but kind of the more useful form. They come in 4 varieties, basically: fire, air, earth, and nature. So you're either going to be water, fire, water, air, water, earth, or water, nature, all the elemental paths. There's some things we have to point out about this guy. Mobility 34. One thing was just kind of weird. I clicked on your underwater fort and I did not see you recruiting one. Like this guy should be on repeat recruitment and you should literally not stop the whole game. In fact, you probably need to tell Marignon, who owns this province, that you love him, but you only have 1 underwater fort and you really need another one. Now, if he wants to attack you, that will be good cause. But if he's involved in a war with somebody else or doesn't want to, he may not give a shit. He's already got part of this lake, so he can probably suck it up and let you have it. because these guys are seriously good. So let's talk about why they're so good. They are so good. They are so good because a few things. One is the water ones the air ones can cloud trap you, so you've got magic phase movement, which you don't really have a ton of magic phase movement as this nation. And can you thug with magic? Okay, first of all, you can do a fair amount of things. Like the air 2s, let's say you have 3 air 2s, which if you're recruiting these all game would be a fair amount. That would be like a pretty good number of air 2s. You're not going to have 3 air 2s for a while, but you could have 3, let's say a super combatant comes in. You could have 2 of them just do air elementals when they get there, and you can have the third one, and those are going to distract the super combatant and kill PD. And you have the third one get ready with a nice little buff cycle of like quickness and liquid body and mirror image, and then flight, or no, he's already flying, and then just attack rear. And if he gets hit and almost dies, he'll turn into a dragon and probably run away. But these are decent anti-super combatant options. They can magic phase. Everybody else, let's look at these other 2. The earth, so the air are your best magic phase kind of thugs. Your earth are, you can move so, okay, damn it. You can move so far with these guys without magic phase. A 34 map move on a flying unit is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. These guys can move so far. So if you're not worried about magic phase, you can just take these guys and thug with them. With the earth ones, they're going to be able to do, you already have 10 natural protection. So you can do Iron Skin. You've got 5 built-in shock resistance, so that you're not even going to really get a shock penalty. You just won't be shock resistant. Which will actually be nice, because in your script, you can go, like, you do Iron Skin first. Or so you can do, like, Summon Earth Power, Iron Skin, and then Resist Lightning if you're a little worried about lightning attacks. And then Temper Flesh and attack or something. We can talk about kind of how you would kit them, but these are high mobility thugs. The nature ones are a little trickier in that, well, there's a few things that are a little tricky. One is that they're not going to be quite as beefy as the earth, and not probably quite as beefy as the air. The air with mist form are actually pretty good tanks if you put decent armor on them. The nice thing about these guys is if you put these ones, the nature ones, you'd have to put more gear on, but basically, if they have pretty good armor, and then they can do personal regen and enlarge, those actually end up being pretty good, especially if you put, I don't know. I mean, there's a ton of different gear you can put on them, but can they get up to size 5? Well, no, just be with enlarge. So, yeah, that's the nature ones. You're basically gonna, and you can also do elemental fortitude if you want to too with them, which is nice. You don't want to cast bark skin because you're already at 10 natural protection, but the 10 natural protection is nice because you're not getting the fire malice. So if you put like 20 protection armor on them, or like Armor of the Knights, which is 24, they're going to be up at like 27 protection. And then with personal regen, and especially if they have a vine shield, they are definitely very capable of thugging. So they also have pretty good MR, but you, depending on who you're fighting, you may have to worry about Mind Hunt. So there is that. Okay, the only one we haven't really talked about yet is the fire one, and the fire one's a little bit interesting. It can also kind of thug, though it has no, fire doesn't really have any outright protection buffs. So with the fire one, it's going to be a bit like the nature, except for the fire one, potentially it can be your best thug, but you have to do the heaviest gym investment in them. And what I mean is he can do Phoenix Pyre. So if you do Flesh Eater, and then for this one, maybe a Bloodthorn, or maybe a Vine Shield, I'm not sure, or a Sculptata Volturnus. I'm kind of leaning towards a Bloodthorn, maybe. And then the heaviest armor and hat you can find, and then Boots of Reinvigoration, or Boots of, well, you know, you don't need quickness. You'll have to put a fire gem on him so that... Or no, you won't. He's fire 2. He can do Phoenix Pyre. And then for this, probably an Amulet of Anti-Magic. And that will get his magic resistance up pretty high. But the idea is basically you do Liquid Body, Quicken Self, Phoenix Pyre, and then you can also do Grip of Winter, which would be pretty good on this. And he'll just sit there pounding away at people, which will fix his fatigue issues, because he's got a Blood Thorn maybe. And you do have a little bit of blood with this nation already, which is why I mention it. You have it on your Pretender. So normally Jomon is not a blood nation. But basically, if you have this guy being fatigue neutral, or like a highly fatigue negative super combatant with, or heavy thug with Phoenix Pyre, depending on the army, and if you can get it where they don't kill you terribly quickly, you can potentially kill the whole army. But it probably takes the biggest gem investment. In fact, if you wanted to do it super properly, you would do an Iron Face for the hat, which would give him Iron Skin. And then you would do something like... Bloodthorn, and then for this... Yeah, you still need the Flesh Eater. Yeah, I'm not totally sure. You would not have a lot of shock resistance if you're doing Iron Skin. You would be neutral. So there's a chance you could kind of get murked by the shock stuff. So if you're not fighting air stuff, you wouldn't really have to worry too much about it. And you could do an Iron Face and then some like Armor of Knights. Anyway, but this guy can be a Phoenix Pyre Thug. All these guys are going to take some gear. Some will take less, like the Earth ones with the Frostbrand. The Nature ones with the Frostbrand and Vine Shield would be sufficient. The air ones with the Frostbrand and Vine Shield could also be sufficient. Fire ones are not going to take more, are going to take more gear, but basically all of these guys can thug. Though, how much they're going to thug is going to depend on what you're fighting and the kind of gear you put on them. But then we haven't even really talked about the combat mage support. So the other important thing is the fire ones, they can do Acid Storm, which is one of the better late game spells. It's pretty good. It's going to be very good if you're fighting people that are relying on really good armor, like Agartha with their blind fighters, because it will over time it'll melt their armor. That's the really important water crosspath, is actually water fire. These guys can also make rune smashers for you. Water nature gives you foul vapors, though you'll probably have that, I think, on some of your communion mages. And yeah, water, air, water, earth. Nothing particularly jumping out at me right now for how you would use this in combat, but the water fire are pretty important for combat, especially if you're fighting people with good heavy base armor. Okay, so that's those guys, and now we're going to talk a little bit, because this is not supposed to be a real national overview, but I've kind of spent a lot of time on it already. You have a bunch of troops. All your troops have decent armor. The thing about samurai armor is it tends to give you a lot of encumbrance. So you can see everybody here, their armor is not phenomenal. It's 15, which is okay, but they have high encumbrance. That's kind of the thing with samurai armor. These guys are bodyguards, which actually is pretty noteworthy, especially if you consider yourself potentially going into assassin hell, which I think is where the game will head. You have a couple sacred. You have these guys, and these guys. This guy has a katana. Mountain survival is undisciplined. This guy is not undisciplined, but he has the nagatana, which is two-handed. Wait, this is two-handed too? Yeah, wait. Okay, wait. What's the difference? 19 damage, 23 damage. Wait, why would I want this guy ever? 14, 13, 15, 17. Okay, the other guy... This guy has much higher attack. That's why you would get this. So this actually is a very high attack score. Anyway. The other kind of interesting things about your units, I know I'm like speeding through this because we're not going to spend a ton of time. Like this guy's notable. Anybody with like a big two-handed pike, they tend to be a little better in the late game when you tend to get in slap fights, and having a big fucking weapon is really nice. You have longbowmen, which are kind of good. You can buff their strength, and this becomes kind of decent. You know, can it get through Army of Gold? Well, let's do the math. Let's say they had 5 armor, and then they get Army of Gold put on them, so they're going to be like 22 protection. You're going to be basically subtracting like 5 from that. So basically it's going to be down to 17. And so you're going to be doing, like, if you have Strength of Giants on these guys, they're going to be doing basically like 13 or 14 versus 17. So the short answer is no. These guys don't do shit once Army of Gold comes out for having an archer. So, yeah. But anyway, they're nice in the mid game. These guys also, I think you have Magic Weapon in your Bless, so that's kind of cool. The other thing is, of course, you get all the Jomon summons. We'll talk about this in a minute. Finally, you get the Shark Warrior. There's a few things notable about the Shark Warrior. One is he has a big HP pool. Very important, because if we look at most of all your other stuff is like human HP, right? 11, 11, 11. There's problems with that in the late game. So one thing is he has high base HP. He's size 4, which kind of sucks. It's a shitty size to be because you're only one guy per square, but you're not as tough as like a size 6. So other people can filter in, but anyway, he's got good strong attacks. He's got a Metal Yari, which is a two-handed weapon, which means it'll be even stronger when you buff him up with Strength of Giants. When you have to start worrying about like flames from the sky and stuff, it really gets hard to use human nations. Like the attrition's so high. These guys are going to be better. And also the battlefield-wide evocations become an issue. And they have dark vision, which means if you're fighting a nation that doesn't have dark vision, you can get an edge with putting up darkness, like a pretty substantial edge. So I think these guys are pretty damn solid. I would definitely consider trying to make them one of my main troops. The other one you have is you have the Shrimp Soldier. These are amphibious. These guys are these are amphibious. The other guys are aquatic. So if these guys could come on land, that would be the shit. Because 14 HP is a nice little edge over 11. And yeah, the Metal Glaive's pretty good. So that's all the base units. Now there's a ton of summons, and a lot of them are in Conjuration, and you've basically already got a lot of them. So rather than like pull up the Mod Inspector, there's basically like 3 or 4 different flavors of these guys, and they're all a little different, but in general they have some kind of armor. They're sacred. A lot of them are storm immune. They may all be, I'm not sure. They have a lightning strike, and they're flying. Some of them have a lot of armor, some of them have a little. And we could go through, and perhaps I'm missing some of the subtlety here of the difference between all of them. Yeah, okay, here you've got one of these guys. What do you have them scripted with? Acid Rain, that's fine. Okay, so now we'll actually take a look at the game now that we've kind of done the quick overview. You may be noticing, there's not much Dominion here, but I see a lot of Jomon flags, and you'd be right, because the Jomon nation is in the funkiest shape maybe I've ever seen. They have Falegra's capital over here, where they kind of marched over here, took over Falegra and his cap circle, and said, hey, this is mine. Then they also, Calum apparently went for a throne rush and barely missed it. Was last minute blocked from a throne rush, as Calum often is. And then everybody said, hey, we don't want to have to deal with that again. And maybe the next time they'll remember that for their next game. Yeah, you have to, I think every player has to die to a Calum throne rush once to to respect the nation appropriately. So anyway, Calum has now been stomped into the ground, and Jomon is now on their capital. They have gone AI since they've given up, and they've been mostly conquered, but the AI is marshalling armies around. A robe of invulnerability? Nice. And you can see there's a bunch of miscellaneous items they got from this battle. We'll go ahead and watch this one just so we have a little, a little entertainment value. We'll kind of see what he's doing. Okay, just a ton of arrows coming in. The Onioji little birds flying in, it's these guys. They're ethereal and they're sacred, which is kind of cool. That's kind of nice. Flaming arrows comes out. A lot of people are starting to rout, it looks like. And have the tango not run in yet? Maybe there weren't tango in this army. No, this is just archers. Okay, and then they charge through, and they have... Who the fuck are these guys? These are some buff Calum troops. Earthbound, damn. Not even blessed. Just have a protection buff on them, and they're ethereal. Yeah, it takes a while to kill. Okay, so anyway, that seems to have worked, and they've taken the fort of Calum now. But there's still a few Calum armies running around. So that's kind of the situation. His dominion is almost nowhere, which sucks because you have really good scales. And he's in this spaghetti position. Now, on some nations, it wouldn't be a huge deal because, like, if you're a flying nation, like if you're Calum, you can deal with a more spaghettified nation because you still can reinforce areas pretty quickly. If you're a sailing nation, you can have a kind of spaghettified nation over a lake because you can reinforce quickly, so you can have a kind of weird-looking nation. If you're a nation that mostly marches their troops around, and especially if they're mostly footmen, you can't really do that anymore. So I would say that's like issue number one. Yeah, and then you say, okay, well, how do we fix it? Well, you can shed part of it, which, you don't really ever want to do. You can attack somebody, which is going to consolidate it. Now, if we look at it, you're a Y, right, like this. The options to attack are Marignan, which I think would be a very awkward war, because you would have to basically attack from one of your spaghetti arms, which is not very strong, and if you attacked from there, you wouldn't have any forces up here to defend against the other players. You could attack from... You can't even really attack from this way. The other option is you could attack... I mean, you potentially could attack down here, actually. This would probably be your best avenue of attack. The problem is you'll be fighting Marignan on the coast, and it gives them some advantages, because they could potentially launch big armies at any of your coastal provinces. And it appears... I don't really know what's happening with Kailasa, but they're kind of holding out, I guess, against Marignan. So anyway, you could attack them. I think it would spaghettify your empire kind of more. But I do think it's worth talking. I think the polite thing to do is to buy this from them for like a nice price, like pay them $600 or something for it if you don't think you're going to attack them. The other thing you can do is you take it from them and then you send them $600, but you say, if you said no, if you say no, or you can take it from them and that way they don't have the chance to PD dump. And what are they going to do? Are they really going to PD dump you? Like, you could send in a thuggy Ryujin who are actually pretty damn good thugs underwater, because water actually turns out to be a very good thug path underwater, even though it's not great on land. Because basically you get Ice Shield, which is like a 20 protective force. So, I mean, and they can infinite PD if you had the right gear on them, wouldn't stop. But who knows what other stuff they have. Also, for situational awareness for the viewers, it's turn 56. So you could attack Marignan, but it's going to amplify your problems of spaghettification. On the other side, you could attack Pangaea. Now, Pangaea is a good target because you have a big border, and usually things you have a big border with are not going to spaghettify you, they'll consolidate you. The problem is you're attacking away from one of the spaghetti arms, right? So you're still going to be a spaghetti nation after you attack Pangea, yeah, that's kind of one of the problems. The other problem is dealing with Pangea. You are literally going to descend into the depths of hell, basically, because you are going to be fighting the nation with some of the lowest price, most efficient assassins in the game. And you can play this game yourself because you have ninjas who are pretty good, but dryads are just horrible to fight against, and it's a morale check they're going to do. So if we look at your troops, usually human mages, and I don't actually know, yeah, they don't have great morale. These guys who you should be getting a ton of have actually really shit morale. So these guys are probably very often not even going to get to have an assassin battle. He'll just be stealing them from you. Which is a problem. It's a very big problem. So I think for that reason, I would really not want to attack Pangea. If you were determined to do it, because this is what your inclination was when you contacted me. If your inclination was that you must attack Pangea, well then you need to look at how you're not going to get horrendously murdered by assassins. Now, I think the strategy that I would tend to employ is the best counter to assassins is spamming out scouts. And I hate to say it, but it's true. The second best counter. Okay, so we're gonna have to get into. We're just gonna have like a 101 on assassinations here, and I hate assassinations. It's a poorly balanced game mechanic. That's why I made that mod to try to fix it, and the mod kind of did fix it, but it kind of messed something else. Kind of messed something else up too. So I'm kind of waiting for mod command to come out to, hopefully the developers will make it for me, and then we can actually fix some of the assassination problems. But anyway, I actually know the player who's playing this, not in this, I don't know anything about them in this game, but I know the player, and they know how to use assassins. So, like, this will literally be a nightmare for you. But the way to do it, so let's say you had this army, which used to take Calum, right? So you've got basically almost 12 dudes. Sorry. Now, what I would say is I would want the odds to be 3-1 that he's going to get a scout. So that means you're going to need 30-something scouts. What does that mean? It means you need to have almost all of your forts every single turn making the cheapest unit you can, which is usually a scout. Now, not all your forts can make scouts. But if you're going to war with Pangea, then scouts are a resource. Who else is cheap? It may be worth testing ninjas. There's a chance the ninja will shuriken a dryad. And if they do this with any kind of regularity, like even if they win an assassination battle 1 out of 4 times with the dryad casting swarm, it may be worth spamming on ninjas. They're not as cheap as a scout, but if they have a scout's always going to die. But if a ninja has a 1 in 4 chance of winning, then it would be worth it. So anyway, that would be worth testing, because there's a chance, even if it's 1 in 6 chance, it'd still be worth spamming on ninjas to kill triads, because it might be your best option. Alternatively, you can just use these guys. Yeah. Okay, so the first thing is you're going to need, and I hate doing it, it's one of the fact that you have to do that in a game if you're going to be fighting assassin hell, it hurts me. It really does hurt me. But unfortunately, it is the single best thing you can do to deal with assassins. The second step is to 1-turn pop forts. Do not move on top of a fort unless you are going to 1-turn pop it if you're fighting a Pangea. So calculate it out, plan, move on top, 1-turn crack. And then you have enough assassins there, enough scouts there to deal with 1 turn of assassination. doing that alone, those are your two most important things, I think, to deal with assassinations. Second most important thing, protect your important mages, your non-redundant mages. So like, if you're using these guys as your main battle mage core, right, you have all these guys. Some of them are going to be slaves. You need redundancy in your slaves, so you need to plan on like a third of them dying to assassins. Let's say if you move like all these guys, plus let's say you actually had 30 scouts and commanders, you move these guys plus 30 scouts and commanders on top of the fort. You would count on maybe a third of these guys who are communion slaves dying. So you need enough redundancy there so that you still have enough communion slaves after that they'll cast their things. For the masters, you may actually, important masters, you either need to have redundancy. If it's like a little stupid spell you don't care about, then you can just have redundancy and have multiple masters. The alternative is you actually put gear that's going to allow them to win the assassination. And basically the gear for that is like, the best anti-assassin gear is like lightless lanterns, bottles of water, not lightless lanterns, lantern shields, sorry. Lantern shields, bottles of water, the Vinemen thing. You also have bodyguards you can get. So these guys, you would put them as guards on your important dudes. I mean, honestly, you could test it, but having commanders with these guys as guards, like each commander has 4 of these guys as a bodyguard, they would probably kill dryads that don't have water bottles, like with 1 swarm casting. There's a good chance, depending on how many people they rolled, it could be worth it, but it's also kind of expensive, and there's a good chance that these guys will also die. So I don't know. I don't actually know what the odds are, but that's definitely one thing worth testing. It's like, it doesn't make sense to put these guys on commanders if you're using these as your chaff, as your like assassin chaff. Even if it doesn't work for them, you do want to put these on your important mages. The other thing that's very important for winning assassin battles is, so if you don't know this already, when you have an assassin battle, the assassin gets to run through their script. You do not get to run through your script. Your mage will go off script and just cast whatever the fuck it wants. And unfortunately, it tends to cast literally the dumbest, the worst. Like if you took a list of all the spells it could cast and you ranked it from least useful to cast in an assassination to most useful, it basically takes a die and it rolls the die, and like if it's like 1 through 5, it picks from like the bottom third of the list. And if it's a 5, then it will pick from like the middle of the list. I mean, if it's a 6, it will pick from the middle of the list. The AI when you go off script is horrible. The important thing to know is that some things it does like casting off script. If you give a nature mage gems, it does kind of like casting swarm. It won't do it all the time, especially if it has other paths, but there's a chance it will cast swarm. Putting 1 nature gem on all your nature mages is a decent counter. Like, if you cast Swarm and have bodyguards, the one advantage you have is you have bodyguards and he doesn't. So if you cast Swarm and have bodyguards and you get this little bird with you, there's a chance you'll win some of the assassinations. Problem though is your morale is so freaking horrible that you're going to kind of fail anyway. I mean, you'll tend to not even go in the battle. Especially if you're attacking into enemy dominion. So that's that. Now, Late Age Pan, too, while we're talking about it, Late Age Pan has lost a lot of the stealthiness of its predecessors. It's like Astral Mages aren't stealthy, the Pans are still stealthy, and the Dryads are still stealthy, but the Minotaur aren't stealthy, the Commanders aren't stealthy. There's a lot less stealthiness on the nation. The Satyrs are still stealthy. But why is that important? Because a nation with Dryads and Assassins, whether they have stealthy Astral Mages is pretty important. And fortunately, these guys are not stealthy Astral Mages. So what that means is you need to have anti-assassin gear for if Pangea decides to attack you. And that would be like, okay, how do you use Dryads? First use of Dryads is get the fuck off my fort. And so the way you do that is you have like, in all of your important forts you don't want to lose, like this throne which you want to take, you would put 20 Dryads, right? It's turn 50. He could totally have 20 Dryads in here, right? So, and I'm not saying he does, but there's a very good chance I would have 20. And you're going to attack me, and however many bottles of water and acorn necklaces and then nature gems, we're just going to have that much kind of chaff, and we're going to assassinate literally all of your commanders. And then your army's going to be stranded, and then Pangaea is a nation that has access to golems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assassinate literally all, I'm going to count how many people, like you attack me, I'm not even going to defend on top of the fort. You're going to move an army in. I'm going to count how many commanders you have. So long as I have enough to kill all your commanders, we're going to just overkill on assassins. And it's a nation with Earth Astral, so I'm going to have golems. And I'm going to teleport golems right here and right here. Because you're not going to be expecting me to teleport golems here magic phase. So magic phase, I killed both of these, whatever's sitting here guarding, which like this turn you have nothing guarding. And here I would do something too. I only need to go normal. This I might normal phase or whatever. You don't even have to magic phase. You can just normal phase, move, attack something, right? You have they have stealthy raiders. They could do that too, but they could also do golems. So anyway, I would do that. I would cut off all your retreat routes and then send one guy out. They rout your whole army, and then yeah, you just lost your entire army. So attacking Pangaea, you do not have the required tech, and the required tech is you need like, you can attack Pangaea when you have 30 commanders and scouts you're willing to use as assassin bait. And then this could work, because then you can move everybody in, you get to have a big battle and do it. So until then, don't fight Pangaea. Now, they are in a situation where they've already ended their nap, and it looks like shit's going to go down. But I've also been told they might be able to talk their way out of it. So I would talk my way out of it as fast as a GD could. Because you're just not prepared. But at some point you're going to need to take this throne, so it's worth talking about how to do it. And I think like you are going to have a little better battlefield magic than Pangaea. You just have to time it so that you have to time it so that you one turn pop the fort and you have enough redundancy to deal with like 30 assassinations. Which the later you go, the more assassins you're going to have. So like 30, I think is a pretty, if you get assassinated by more than 30, I would be pretty tilted. But I think at this point, like maybe if you were to attack now, I'd plan on 20, and then like 10 or 15 turns, I'd plan on 30. For a throne. So that's that. Then you get to have your battle. Then like, how are you going to win your battle? Well, if we look at Pangaea, it's basically a heavily armored nation. I do not believe they have as much berserk as they used to. They tend to, except unless they have minotaurs, and it doesn't look like they're getting minotaurs. They're getting these centaur. And the centaur, they don't really hit very hard. The thing is, in the early centaur warriors and stuff in the early age, they would go berserk and shit, and that was pretty good because then their attack stats would raise. These guys, like Pangaea, tends to get in a slap fight in the late game. So they have 20 protection. They're going to be hard to kill. They'll put some protection buff on them. Well, you just killed them some other way than going through protection. And like some nations can't do that because like almost all their stuff has to go through protection. Well, you're not those nations. You have like powerful communions that can do all the elemental magic. So for example, you can have all of your air, like you can put storm up. You can have all of your guys, like your air masters, they can do summon storm power. And then with storm up and summon air power, they're going to be, and then with the, if they have got like a 8 strength communion behind them, 8 is 2, 4, 8, so it's going to be 3. So they're going to be 4 or 5. They're going to be air 5 casters that are going to be spamming out Thunderstrike. And so then you kill them that way. So I think you can definitely win a straight-up fight. So I think we've kind of covered that. The other part of kind of winning against Pangea is, of course, winning the raiding war. And I think the raiding, you can do, like, you have pretty efficient troops. You can do it with troops. Troops are tricky to raid with in the late game because basically there's a bunch of magic phase counters that they're just dead. So I would say normal troops are like liabilities, but they're liabilities you must have in order to take infrastructure. For raiding, unless they're stealthy, do we have good stealthy troops? Yeah, we don't. Yeah, I mean, you can still use them for raiding, but it's kind of... You just have to understand, he could have golems, and golems could come kill your raiders, and that's kind of going to be it. Now, fortunately, like, if you get a lot of these guys, you can magic phase on top of golems. Or you can put them where you think... You can. It's easy for you to... Yeah. Well, we'll talk about winning the raiding war, so we'll open that up as a topic. One thing, the first thing of winning the raiding war is not losing to raids yourself. One of the easiest ways to not lose to raids is to have stuff you spam out behind PD that's going to make your PD stronger. So, for example, any of your Nature 2s, they can do Swarm, and then they can do Mass Protection. And then you can put them on advance and cast spells, and the army's, if you have like 20 PD, the army's going to last for a while, and then these guys will walk in and probably do Lightning Bolt or something. Like, that's probably what this guy would do. You could put an Earth Gem on him, have him do Earth Power first, and then Swarm, and then Mass Protection. And that way he would kind of get out of being asleep a little sooner, and then he could, you know, probably walk in range and spam Lightning Bolt out when he woke up. Is that going to block a ton of raiders? No. But is it going to do a lot better job than 20 PD alone? Oh, it's going to do a shit ton better. And how much did you invest? You invested almost nothing. You invested like 150, 60 gold mage with like 3 nature gems and an earth gem. And then with that, you're going to have a very real chance of killing a small Pangean army, like a stealthy raiding squad. And you're going to have a pretty reasonable chance to kill like a golem or one of their... Because they can potentially kit their... They have various thug options they can do too. So you would have a decent chance of killing one of them. You know, who knows what they'll do when they get in close, because they might do Earth Mild or something else. So if you go to war with Pan, one thing you need to think about, and you might not do it everywhere because you might not have the resources, is you want to win the raiding war. And the first thing of winning the raiding war is putting in some PD. So I would first pick provinces where you have like a decent PD type. Like here's a very good PD type. So here you can just do like 20 protection. You could take this guy, you could move him here. Well, you've already got a big army coming in, but we'll just do this for shits and giggles. You would put 3 and then 1, and then you could script him like we talked about. And he would buff up the PD, and then they wouldn't lose. So that's an option. Let's take a look at, let's finish the raiding discussion. To raid on your own, I would use a mix of low commitment, low value troops. Like you could potentially do very small squads of humans. The nice thing about doing that is it's going to force him to put more than like 6 PD. He's going to have to put like 15, 20 PD so that your squads don't kill it too easy. Like if you kill it, you'd take a fair amount of losses. What would that be in practice? I don't know. Like, I mean, you've got riches from beneath up, so you have a ton of resources. You could probably do, I mean, I imagine 200 gold worth of archers, like 20 archers, is going to take down most PD. Because they're going to run to you, you're going to shoot at the first people, they're going to get in combat, you're going to chop them up. I imagine, and I haven't tested this, but just looking at it, I imagine 20 archers would take care of most PD. So you can organize it into groups of like 20 dudes. There's problems. The problem is raiding into Pangaea, they can have dryads literally everywhere. And you don't really... These guys have okay morale, so you'll probably end up getting assassinated more than you get charmed. The problem is, with these guys on Bodyguards, they're not actually going to use their katana. So, you know, what are you going to do? But, like, you could have a... I mean, honestly, what you could do is you take, like... A squad would be, like, 4 or 5 of these guys on Bodyguard Commander, and you have, like, your little squad leader. And you have them on Guard Commander, and you put them, like, just right in front of the archers. So, you know, like... If this is the guy, and he's got 20 archers, and then let's pretend these 5 were the other unit. You can have these guys on Guard Commander. You can have him right here. And these guys, the Bodyguards are, I think, a little bit tougher than your archers. And then you put these guys, like, right here. And so these guys are on Hold and Fire closest, and then these guys are on Guard Commander, and then this guy's on Hold, Hold, Hold. And then you have a decent chance of killing, you know, a dryad. But this is the problem with raiding with troops, is you're now committing like 250 gold to raid a province, which is worth like 60. And there's a very good chance that you lose the 250 gold and you only have this province for 1 turn. Right? And that's because of fucking dryads. Or he could, you know, there's a ton of different things. Raiding, the farther you go into the late game, like raiding is extremely profitable in the mid game, and as you go into the late game, raiding is really tricky because you're at a big disadvantage because you have exposed troops out in the open. And there's like a lot of different ways they can die. And I don't know, like the higher the skill level your game is, the more true that is. And then you have like a whole new meta evolves around, well, what are the ways I can raid where I'm not actually risking troops? And almost none of that involves like normal troops for raiding. But if you were going to do it, I would do it the lowest commitment way I could, and I would make it at least somewhat resistant to dryads. So you do that, you can raid some. The ways to throw off raiding are you take a province and then you throw in, like, you can do like a small amount of PD, or like this guy, he's a fire too. You could put him here and have him do like a couple fire elementals behind PD. You do that to throw off the people when they take their provinces they're raiding from you back. The other things you can do are you can get these guys and raid with them as thugs. Quite effective. Yeah, I don't see any other great raiding tools just in here. To get your other good raiding tools, we're going to have to look at your summons. So I think what I'm going to do... Well, I'm going to... One second. Okay, so what we're going to do... because to talk about efficient late game raiding, like that is a huge topic, and it's a topic I don't have completely figured out by any means. Because it's, in some ways... It's an intractable problem, which is how the game's designed, because it punishes you heavily for being aggressive in the late game. Unless you have literally every box checked. And that, going into all of that is beyond the scope of this, but we're going to cover some of it. Now, to do that, we need to talk about magic and all the different spells which you can get. Like, some of your nationals, basically getting Onishugo and Dione and that sort of thing. To do that, before we do that though, I feel like it's a little too theory crafty right now, and so I want to zoom out and let's talk about what you should be doing. I think, in my opinion, and the general situation we're in. I think what you should be doing is getting ready for late game and attacking Agartha, because it's going to core up your empire, and I think it's a much better matchup. It's a matchup where you could actually win quickly rather than this, which will drag you into a mire, even if you're winning, that will probably... first of all, it's going to make you want to quit, which, like, come on. You deserve better than that. You should enjoy the game. This is going to make you want to quit. You're going to want to uninstall. That's a promise. I mean, the only good thing about attacking Pangaea is they don't seem terribly big. Well, no, they're pretty big. Don't do it, man. Don't do it. Agartha, on the other hand, is going to give you a nice, normal-looking empire if you conquer them. It's also going to give you 2 thrones, right? It's going to secure your access to this one because you'll now kind of bring this one fully in your empire. It's also going to make Marignan another good target. And if you can convince Pangaea that you both go on Marignan and that you just need to eat Agartha first so that he's a good target, maybe you don't tell him that part, but that would be perfect. The best way this game could play out for you is you get a 1v1 with Agartha, you don't let Marignan vulture, and if Marignan vultures, then you get Pangaea at your back where y'all can both go to war against Marignan, because Pangaea actually could really pick on Marignan, could bust him down this way. Though if I were Pangaea... Oh no, and they have this whole border here. So yeah, Pangaea has a pretty nice border with Marignan. So that is a much better play, is you eat Agartha and prepare for late game, and then you go after Marignan and you just ignore Pan. Marignan has some crazy late game stuff they can do, like late age Marignan has crazy blood magic and rescindance and all sorts of funny things. Or is it rescindance or recandescence or reascendance? I don't know. But anyway, they get the cool fallen angels. So yeah, I think that's what you should do. If we look at the gym situation, which is of course very important, we're going to look at this in 2 ways. One is what you got: good fire, good air, shit-tastic water, no fucking water, earth, okay astral, bad death, and bad nature. And let's see why. Fire, you site searched high, but not broadly, but not bad. Air, you've site searched high, but even less broadly, or about the same. Water, you've actually site searched a lot. You just have gotten really unlucky with water. That's unfortunate. Earth, you've site searched the most, and you had pretty good earth. Astral, you've site searched a lot, but you have only okay astral. And then death, you've site searched almost none. Nature, you've site searched a lot, but you haven't gotten very lucky. Okay. The global situation, you control which riches from beneath. And the way this all works out is you're going to basically have a shit ton of resources to produce. This province income bonus, when I have done the math, it's about a 20% bump to your income. All right, so, but it's based on how many candles you have. In Jomon's particular case, he's getting nowhere near a 20% income bump because he doesn't have any fucking candles. The globals that are up are Stellar Focus, Eternal Pyre, and Mother Oak. Jomon had tried putting up Earthblood Deepwell, but it got taken down. And then you also have a trickle, like an absolute trickle of blood slaves. You have 52, so you can empower somebody now. And you've got your god. But your god is not really set up to get you any farther into blood because you don't have death. And we'll take a look. I can't remember for Jomon if there's any good ways to break into blood specifically. There might be. The one thing we can check real quick is see if you have Zots anywhere. No Zots so far. Yeah, no Zots. Kind of hard to tell from looking at the map where the caves are, but yeah, okay. So, and we'll take a look at your research again, because that's the other kind of situational thing we need to be aware of. So your conjuration, you're pretty spread. You've got Alt 7, which means you can do lots of cool alt stuff. You can do Fog Warriors, you can do Mass Protection. This is going to present some problems fighting Agartha, and we're going to talk about that. Agartha, first of all, is going to have Army of Gold. By turn 58, if an Agartha that big doesn't have Army of Gold, I don't know what they're doing. So they're going to be Alt 9. Which is important because we're going to be at war with them. And Agartha, I think they are going to have... I can't remember. Let's take a look real quick at Late Age Agartha. I forget how much fire access they have. Yeah, they're going to be having flaming arrows. Okay, yeah. And they've got Catonian alchemists. Yeah. Yeah, so they're going to have flaming arrows on crossbows. If we look at their actual armies, you can see they've got a shit ton of crossbows, and then blind lords. And then here we can see a Tomb Oracle. So, for those of you who don't know, Agartha is basically the nation that, like Late Age Agartha, is very different than Middle Age and Early Age. They basically said, what would happen if we gave you a Recruit Anywhere Sacred that's really, really beefy, and they can just sit in your front line and not die? And then we gave you a ton of really good crossbows, and we gave you Skelly Spam. So you can have basically a front line that's going to block any charge and, guard your crossbows, while you just have skeletons pour around the sides and overwhelm the enemy while you pummel them with flaming arrow crossbows. And then we're going to give you a super combatant unit called the Tomb Oracle that can kill armies. And they were like, oh, let's make that nation. We'll call it Late Age Agartha. So that's how Late Age Agartha plays. If you understand that, then you can understand kind of how to counter it. But that's the first thing to understand, is how the nation plays. And fortunately, the same way you're going to counter Tomb Oracles, I think, is going to be the same way you're going to counter this Cheese Whiz strategy. Yeah. You've got evocation very reasonably low. It's 5, which gives you access to some things, like Earthquake, etc. You've got enchantment 7, which gives you mass flight. It also gives you life after death. And then it, of course, is going to give you the different, rigor mortis and grip of winter and all that sort of thing. Heat from hell. So you've got enchantment 7. And then you've got Thom 5, which I guess just gives you Soul Slay, which is pretty good against super combatants and stuff. You don't have Enslaved Mind yet, and you don't have Charm. Those are actually going to be pretty damn useful anti-super combatant strategies. Okay, so we've kind of gotten ourselves situated with your research. Let's assume that you do not go to war with Pan. If you go to war with Pan, you can win, but you just have to deal with assassins, all right? And then a lot of the same things we're going to talk about how you're going to win against Agartha. I think a lot of them will apply with Pan, because they'll definitely apply with Pan. The ways in which these guys are similar is that they're basically going to slap fight the shit out of you. The difference is that Agartha's probably going to have heavier mage support with stuff like flaming arrows on a shit ton of crossbows. Pangaea can have that too. They have crossbows. I don't think they have fire access as Pangaea. That would be a little anti-thematic. These guys have fire? No. So they could have flaming crossbows, but unlikely. But basically, you're going to be in a slap fight. And the key to winning a slap fight is a few things, and you already have a lot of them. So let's take a look. One of the key things is you need high damage weapons. So when I'm scanning through the roster, first of all, fuck all these guys, all right? Like, you're not going to win. These guys, Agartha is going to have Army of Gold, and these guys are literally going to do shit. He's going to have Army of Gold, so he's going to have fire resistance, so if you put flaming arrows, nobody cares anymore. And then they're going to hit dudes with, like, his blind guards are going to have 30 protection. They're literally going to do nothing. Anyway. So fuck those guys. Now, the things that we are going to need to have on our dudes is we are going to need to have Strength of Giants, and we're going to need to have Weapons of Sharpness. And normally those are hard to do, but they're not hard for you, because you have Earth in your communions, and you have communions, so you can be very high Earth without investing gems. So what does that mean? It means we like this guy. This guy is good. He's cheap. We don't care if he dies. He's got a 22 damage attack. Not bad. We've also got these guys who have a 23 damage attack. We have these guys who have very high attack and 19. You can get them too, but they're not formation fighters, they're undisciplined, which I hate. So I would just get these guys with the higher attack and skip these. Being two-handed is also a buff, because normally when you do Strength of Giants on a unit, it is going to get 1 damage for every strength. But if you do Strength of Giants on a two-handed weapon, they're going to get 5. And so anyway, that is significant, because now this guy with 5 damage is going to be a 28 damage attack. Now that is very significant. That's a very large amount of attack. That is enough attack to chip through people, like even Blind Lords with Army of Gold. You will do chip damage, but you will chip through them, and that is important. And the other thing is on your Bless, you do have Achille Bless, which I approve of. You have magic weapons, and you have Strength +4, which means for some reason in your capital you've had your capital recruiting these guys. Well, fuck those guys. You need these guys, right? All day, every day, all day, right? And your Dominion Strength is shit, by the way. You've got your Dominion Strength is 6, and that's after having 5 temples. So we need to get that up. Unfortunately, those guys are cap only, so you can't get them everywhere else. Everywhere else, you can get these guys with the no dachi and their bodyguard. They're 14 gold. Or, counterpoint, you can get these guys right here, which are 10 gold, so you can have significantly more of them, and they actually do more fucking damage. So I would get them. The problem is their morale is a little less, so just put them on a good general. Like these guys are gonna kind of help with the morale issue. You also, late game 2, morale threats become bigger and bigger, so you may need to have like the Horn of Valor on your leader. Very cheap. That +1 morale helps. And then you can also have Fire, Earth. You can also have this little hat, and this is going to give you +2 morale. And so +3 morale, like if we take a look at, if you get this guy, he's going to do is that the same as this? No. Okay, +2 morale for 2 squads. You take this guy and you throw on, whatchamacallit? Yeah, you throw on those 2 items, you're going to be up to +5, right? And so you take your little shit guy, who right now is 11 morale, and first of all, this is going to go to 10 when you're an enemy dominion, but then you'll be at 15 in enemy dominion, which is okay. It's okay. So anyway, that is, I think, what I would recruit. And then you just have to fight these guys. Now, the other trick to fighting and to actually having these guys punch through the Agarthan line is you are going to need Weapons of Sharpness. Weapons of Sharpness is a very underused spell. It's very hard to cast. If you're a normal nation and you don't have Earth in your communions, it's very hard to get Weapons of Sharpness off. But if you can get it off, it's a very big area of effect. 25. It costs not even that much fatigue. So once you have a level 5 caster, you can kind of spam it out. But if you cover all your guys in Weapons of Sharpness, you are going to win any of the late game slap fights. Now let's take a Blind Lord and let's figure out what their stats are going to be with Army of Gold. With Army of Gold, a Blind Lord's stats are going to be 20 protection plus 20 protection means he'll be right at 30. All right, he's going to be 30 protection. Now, if you take your guys and you do Strength of Giants on them, these are your little shitty 10 gold units, right? You do Strength of Giants on this guy. He's going to be now a 27 damage attack, right? Which actually is going to be able to do chip damage to 30 protection, right? But once you get Weapons of Sharpness on him, he's going to be doing AP damage. And so now you are going to be going against 15 protection. And how much is 27 damage going to do against 15 protection? Yeah, 12. Let's look at how much strength the Blind Lord has. Oh, he has 14, which means with any kind of DRN, you're going to kill him. Not bad, right? Oh, he has a regeneration bless. It doesn't matter because you 2-hit kill him, all right? So one of the strengths of your nation is you have shitty guys that have, or like cheap little guys that have some armor so they don't die. Unfortunately, they have some encumbrance issues, but you can kind of deal with that. And they have high damage 2-handed weapons, right? These are a huge asset on a nation. Yeah. So first, okay, we now have a tool to deal with the Blind Lords. The problem is the nation isn't really just Blind Lords, it's also all these crossbowmen and the undead, so how are we going to deal with that? Well, The crossbowmen we deal with stuff you already have researched. You already have Arrowfend, which you put up. You can also, since you may or may not be bringing archers of your own, I suggest you get out of the archer business, but if you're in it, you can just do Arrowfend and bring your archers. If you have gotten out of the arrow business, then you can drop Storm yourself, and then you're going to be perfectly fine. So yeah, Storm is also going to block 50% of the missiles. So that's good. Storm is also good to put up for Rain because he's going to be having flaming arrows. You don't want your guys set on fire. Okay, so that is Storm. So what have we taken away so far? We want the high damage guys. We want to have weapons of sharpness and strength of giants put on them. We want to have Rain so we don't get put on fire. We probably are going to need to do mass protection. We also are going to need, if we do mass protection on our troops, especially against the Gartha, because they're going to have fire stuff, you are going to need some kind of fire protection. So your ways to get fire protection are you can get Frostfen down here, or up in Alteration, you can get Warriors of Methuselah. And you can do either of these. Frostfen's a little cheaper to cast in terms of gems. And I feel like Alt 8 by itself is a little meh. I mean, there's some good stuff in here, right? But, and like Liquefy could be good. Wizard Tower's okay. I mean, but with the gem income you have, none of this jumps out of me and says super duper awesome. Whereas if you look at Enchantment 8, where you're going to get a lot of the other resistance stuff you need, you're also going to get mass regen, which is kind of a game changer. So what I would suggest is go to war with the Gartha, get Enchantment 8, get mass regen, and then all of these different resistances, and drop all these every battle, because that's one of the things you can, of course, do with Jomon, because you have high-level access to every spell you want in every battle with shitty, cheap human mages, right? So, yeah, you drop all these. I think getting... Where are you getting it? See, it's not even on your thing. Yeah, fuck all this, right? Enchantment 8. Yeah, most important thing you can get right now. And that will allow you to win a war with the Gartha. Because you're going to need mass protection, you're going to need fog warriors, you're going to need fire fend. You're still going to be getting hit by the arrows, which are going to deal flaming damage, but if you have rain, the fires will go out, and you'll have mass regen up, and they'll heal. And you, oddly enough, will be... Your shitty guys are going to be beating the shit out of his... out of his Blind Lords. And with Arrowfend and Fog Warriors and Mass Protection and Firefend, his crossbows aren't going to be doing shit to you. The final thing we have to address in the Agartha equation, or not the final thing, the second to final thing, is we have to talk about the Skelly spam, because these guys can pump out a huge amount of Skelly spam. Now, the number one way to deal with Skelly spam is to put up Firestorm, which is something you can do. So, there's actually another way to do it, which actually this is what you should do. Because Agartha is going to do Army of Gold, and he's also going to do Ground Army, but Army of Gold plus Ground Army is going to mean you are neutral on shock resistance, right? But you are going to do Mass Protection and Fog Warriors, and you're going to do all of the different things which you just got, because you switched research priorities, and you got Thunderfend and Mass Protection, right? I mean, Mass Regen. Right, so you with Thunderfend, you're going to have 5 shock resistance. And now you're going to put up, guess what? Wrathful Skies, which is going to be your next research priority. Enchantment 8, because you can still win fights without Wrathful Skies, but you're going to put up Evocation, and you're going to do Wrathful Skies. So you're going to do Storm. But if you have archers, you may not want to do Storm. You can do Wrathful Skies without Storm, but it gets way better with Wrathful Skies. Now, there's a little problem with this, and in some ways I kind of lied to you and I said you'd be okay, because it does 15 AN shock damage each lightning bolt. The problem with that is your guys only have 10 HP. And so even with... Oh, they have 9 HP. even with whatchamacallit, with Thunderfend, you're still going to be getting the shit zapped out of you. Because I think it will be one-hit kills mostly. I think so. So that's kind of a problem, but it's an option you have, and it's going to deal with, if you have to crack a fort and you know inside that fort there's going to be a ton of people spamming skeletons, I would do it. You're going to have to accept that some of your guys are going to die. You don't want to overcommit and bring too many dudes, but you want to bring enough dudes to clog up the gate for like 20 minutes while he piles up some unbelievable amount of skeletons, and Wrathful Skies kills everything. The other thing you can do is you can do Foul Vapors. Foul Vapors with mass regen is also pretty good, and if he doesn't put Poison Ward up himself, it may not be something he's expecting. You can totally kill everybody with Poison Ward. But again, to do Foul Vapors, you need Enchantment 8, because you want... Oh, no, I'm sorry. You already have it with Serpent's Blessing. So, but those are things to think about for fort battles. The Foul Vapors is not going to help with the Skelly spam, but Firestorm and Wrathful Skies, the Skelly spam is not going to be buffed. So that will help kind of clear it out. The other option to deal with it is, and this I don't feel like deals with it quite as well, and it's going to blind some of your own dudes, but is... Wait, where the hell is it? I thought it was here. Sometimes I forget these things. Okay, there we go. So you already have it, Solar Brilliance. So you can put this up. Undead are going to take 5 AP damage, but I think it's a 5% chance. It doesn't kill the undead very quick, is the point. But it will kill them over long periods of time. I don't find it's a great way to deal with Skelly spam, but it's a good way to deal with like huge Scalaria-size armies, which is not reliant on Skelly spam, because killing 5% of 2,000 skeletons is a lot. Anyway, that's Solar Brilliance. It's an option, but the blinding thing is not going to be super effective on Blind Lords and stuff. I wouldn't really go with this. I think the best option, because the thing is, Wrathful Skies is going to kill your own guys, but you're going to need that until you can do Firestorm, which is 7. So I would probably go like this. Enchantment 8, Evocation 7. And at this point, you can definitely storm forts, because he's not going to be able to clog up the gate anymore with skeletons very much, because Firestorm will kill them pretty shortly after they come out. And so you can actually kind of bust through. So I think we've covered pretty much what you need to cover Agartha. The only thing we haven't talked about is killing 2 Oracles. And honestly, it's as simple as just having your dudes in your army, like your masters, you make sure they're on advance and cast spells. Right? That's it. Advance and cast spells. Spells, advance and cast spells. They will eventually kill the Tomb Oracle, right? Because they'll be doing Soul Slay. Well, okay, Soul Slay they don't really need to be in range, but like they'll start doing lightning bolts and stuff. The closer they get, the better the precision will get on any of the evocation stuff. And then they won't even cast the evocation stuff from a long way away, because they know they're going to miss, and so they just sit there and cast something useless. If you put them on advance and cast spells, they'll eventually get close and cast something useful. Now, they'll kill some people in your army, but like, what you going to do? If you want to snipe 2 Oracles, that's something else, but you have options. If they're not geared up with MR, you can do Mind Hunt, which is also something you'll get by going Evocation. You get that at 6, so another good reason to have that kind of high priority. If you don't, you could get golems that could be custom kitted to kill 2 Oracles. 2 Oracles are Death 3 Fire. I mean Death 3 Earth 3, if I recall. So they're beefy, but basically they're undead. You can just put any undead killing weapon on a golem, buff up their attack, and they should do okay. And golems are something you have access to. I haven't actually seen any golems, but having 1 golem just to kill random 2 Oracles is probably okay. But yeah, in your armies, you should be able to kill them with advance and cast spells. If that doesn't work, the other thing you can do is all of your like army leading commanders, you give them these things, Just Man's Crosses, and you put them on stay behind troops, or you have them on fire, I guess. Depending, if you have archers, stay behind troops works. I mean, you want to do fire. If you have basically a melee only army, you can do stay behind troops and they'll tend to walk up to your front line. Anyway, these guys murder undead. So like 3 of those in an army would help kind of insulate you from having it wiped from two oracles. Yeah. I think you actually have a very good match. Agartha is a strong nation. But they are, in my opinion at least, like they're a few trick pony. You know, they can do a few things and they can do those few things very, very well. Jomon is a nation that can do a ton of things. They can do a ton of things well. And that's pretty good. Okay, it's getting to be long. We have only a few more things we're going to cover. You're a human nation entering the late game. The other big elephant in the room is you have to talk about Murdering Winter, and you have to talk about Flames from the Sky. Now, we can see Agartha is cold, so it means Murdering Winter is an option. And Murdering Winter is dependent on temperature scales, right? You are heat, so when you're in your own dominion, you don't have to worry about Murdering Winter. Marignon's probably heat. Yeah, Marignon's heat. Pangaea's probably heat. No, Pangaea's neutral, okay? Murdering Winter by itself is not going to murder you anywhere except Agartha, right? So maybe Agartha doesn't do it, but it's a big danger. And unfortunately for you, bringing human troops into Cold 3 this late in the game, he basically has the option to kill half your troops. And that's just how it is. It's just how it is. Now, fortunately for you, you are only going to be, like, if you move an army on top of this fort, it's mostly going to be gold. Gold is easily replaced. If you're playing a nation which doesn't have a lot of magic diversity, and they have to make a lot of items or summon a lot of units to actually get the important spells they need to cast, losing an army to Murdering Winter would be just crippling. For you, you can kind of suck it up and move along. The nasty combo, of course, for human nations is Murdering Winter plus Flames from the Sky. And Flames from the Sky is not dependent on temperature scales. And if that happens to you, then almost all your army is going to be dead, and whatever they have to come out and fight you is just going to be picking through the remains of a beat-to-shit army. Yeah. Now, how can you deal with that? Well, there's actually not a lot of good ways, unfortunately. These are your mages, and they're going to die in one hit to Cold 3 Murdering Winter, and they are going to die in one hit to Flames from the Sky. Some options include making these guys, making Demon Banes. They only cost 5. Unfortunately, your water income is shit. Absolute dog shit. So that option is kind of out for you. You potentially can site search more water, but water's like your most site search path. You just got really unlucky. But you haven't site searched it deep, so get out there, get these things site searched. I wouldn't waste water gems because you're too poor. Waste mage turns instead. Put like boosters on them, have them go look. Because this is something that may not be an issue right now at turn 50 something, but it's definitely going to be an issue at turn 80, right? So you have some time to prepare. Your first step in preparation is finishing water site searching, right? Because these guys with the Demon Bane, they're now going to be... let's look at why the Demon Bane's good for this. You get 15 fire resistance. You're automatically immune to Flames from the Sky. You've got 5 hit points. Why is 5 hit points important? It's going to put you up to 14. Shit. You're still going to die to Murdering Winters. Murdering Winters in Cold 3 is... Murdering Winter in Cold 3 is 14 damage. Is that right? It's 8 plus 6. Yeah, 14 damage. So, yeah. Probably still going to die. So, what is the next best option? Well, we're going to need things that are going to give us cold resistance. What are the options? The thing is, all the armors that give you cold resistance Now, you can get cold resistance from one of the nature things, from this one. And you have more nature than you have. This may be what you have to make on your guys. It's going to give them a little body armor. It's going to prevent them from dying to Murdering Winter. People are going to wonder what the fuck you're doing. Why do you have dire wolf pelts on all your guys? They're going to be calling you a noob. But maybe it's the best way, because you don't have any water gems. The other thing, which is obvious, is you make a Ring of Frost. But honestly, your water income's so shit, I don't think you can actually do that in mass. And of course, this negates, like, is ignoring the problem that you are going to have a shit ton of your main, like, your actual army die. So those are ways to kind of protect your mage from Murdering Winter, and from Flames from the Sky. Honestly, for most of the game, once you deal with Agartha, Flames from the Sky is going to be your bigger problem. So in that way, Frostbrands will be a pretty good way to protect your mage core. Your troops, because Murdering Winter is armor negating, so your troops are just fucked when they cast it in Cold 3. They're all, half of them are dead. Flames from the Sky is different. It's armor piercing damage. So if you take guys with pretty good armor, like these guys have 15 armor, it's going to be, I can't even remember the number. It's like 8 to 12 or 14. It's some amount of AP damage. One Flames from the Sky is probably not going to kill a samurai, right? And each time they cast it, 50% of your units will be affected. So you basically have to get hit by it twice for these guys to die, because they have a decent amount of protection. So I think your army is actually kind of okay with Flames from the Sky. If they cast it twice on you, you'd probably lose 25% of your army. And if you have Demon Banes, or, which would be the best thing, ideally, on your mages, you wouldn't lose your mages. So yeah, that's probably how the situation plays out with the samurai and Flames from the Sky. Flames from the Sky can be targeted multiple times on the same province. Murdering Winter can only be targeted once. These are weird little things you wish you didn't fucking know about late game. But if you don't know them and other people do know them, they're going to murder you in the late game. I hate the late game. I really do. I don't know if it's coming through. It's just, you can't do anything. Like, especially human nations. Being a human nation in the late game is just fucking horrible. It really is. Basically, just from those two spells. But I understand why the spells exist. It's because human mages are so fucking good. They're so cheap, they're so efficient, you spam them out, they're so good in the late game. This is like a way to counter mage balls. But it's too good of a counter. It's a hard counter, like where you can't even use human mages at all anymore. Kind of. So anyway, best bet for dealing with Murdering Winter then, for your armies, because again it'll wipe out your armies, is actually not fighting in Cold 3. Now you may ask, but his Dominion is Cold 3, how can I avoid it? That's a good question. Well, the answer is, I believe, is it Alteration? Evocation? Breath of the Desert, here we go. So you need a Fire 3, Air 1 guy, which is a weird fucking crosspath, but fortunately, I believe you're playing on a nation that can do it. Wait, where? Okay, yeah, these guys. Oh wait, no. Fire Air. So yeah, some of these guys will be Fire Air. I don't know if you have, they're probably your most, no, these guys can be Fire too. So you can have tons of Fire Airs. You just have to look for them. But then you need 2 Fire Boosters. So you need the Fire Death Booster, and you need the Fire Booster, or you need an Elemental Staff. And wherever your big army is, you're going to spam the whatever you call it. Evocation. Breath of Desert, alright? And the way this works is you have to cast it one turn before... Basically, wherever your army is, you cast it wherever your army's going. And if a battle takes place there that turn, it's not going to be present. It'll only take place the turn after. So you have to kind of like plan ahead. So if you're sitting on top of a fort, if you know you're going to sit on top of a fort, like, just start dropping it, right? So, like, ideally one turn before you move on the fort is when you want to cast it. So you might even need 2 casters. So like arranging to have 2 casters, 2 people who can cast it. You might not need to cast it twice every turn. Is going to be critical for invading an Agartha if he's planning on doing Murdering Winter. Now you may have an Agartha that doesn't have evocation researched. You know, he doesn't even know what Murdering Winter is. And he wonders, he guess, you know, he's going to think you're worried about, you know, Grip of Winter or something. You know, some kind of shit he was going to do in Cold 3 and fatigue you out with Rigor Mortis and other stuff. Which is actually is another point. Make sure to fight Agartha, Frostfiend, not optional. Firefiend, not optional. Relief is a must, because he's probably going to put up Rigor Mortis. And then you'll be okay. All right? So I think that's a pretty damn good summary of how you would have to fight into Agartha, assuming kind of worst case scenario. Once you have taken Agartha, ideally you and Pan go on Marignon. So you need to patch things up with Pan. If you get sucked into fighting Pan, try to win the raiding war. Make scouts and commanders like fucking crazy. And just don't go on top of forts until you can one turn take them. Bring redundancy for your mages and important spells. Put bodyguards on important mages. And try to take things in one battle. The same thing is going to apply for how you're going to win with Strength of Giants and Weapons of Sharpness. You'll cut through his front line like a hot knife through butter. I'd get out of the archer business. It may work on Pan, but I doubt it. Pan's probably already at the spot where they can do Army of Gold, in which case your archers do nothing. So, I would actually say these archers are like almost a liability. Like 18 damage is not a ton. The archers are actually, yeah, they're okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe it works. I don't know. They're not a liability, but I would retool my army. So one of the ways to retool is to expend them dying in a fight. So you can have them, you can use them against Agartha. You'll see how well they work. Maybe on Fire Archer, they'll get through the Agarthan archers. So it could be actually okay for that. But basically, I think you're looking to have them die and replace them with other dudes. One argument I think to be made, 17, 15, no, it's not really strong enough. Yeah, I was going to see if there was an argument to be made. Like, these guys have 17 protection, which is going to make them a little better from flames from the sky, but no. I think you still go with the shit dudes. Okay, so we've talked about a lot. The other thing you have to do is you have to break into death more. You have very, very limited death casters. You got these guys, and I guess you were shitting them out so that eventually you got... I don't remember where you put them. You've got a death 2 one somewhere. I have no idea. Basically, okay. Where the fuck is it? Oh, we actually still have a couple more things to cover. Here I was thinking I was being done. I just remembered a few more things we got to talk about. Okay, here's your death one. Okay, let's talk about side-searching death real quick. You need to get Onishugo, right? Onishugo you already have researched, right? Oni General, all right? How the fuck are you going to cast it? You don't have fire. Well, you're going to have to empower him in fire. Is it worth it? Yeah, I think it's worth it. All right. So you empower him in fire, you get Onishugo, but timing is going to be a little important here. And I don't think you do it yet. I think what you need to do right now is like having the ability to summon Onishugo, but having shit death income doesn't really help you much. What I think I would do is I would do Create Revenant. And now once you can do Create Revenant, you can have that Revenant spend death gems every month to get all your site search for death. Once you have that done, you take this guy, you... I don't... We'll actually look up. What are these guys? Bakemonos? Bakanekos. Okay, so I've got the mod inspector pulled up. Let me pull it up here. So, okay, these are the Bakanekos. So, you've already empowered them in death. You gotta... They're fire or death. To get them, they're 8 gems, so they're cheap. And yeah, you've gotten one. Great. You've empowered him in death. A smart move. I don't know if you were actually thinking about it, if you were just trying to like bootstrap your way up in death. You're gonna get a, I don't even know, maybe you made a skull staff or something. What you need to do, the way to bootstrap is you got to get somebody up to death 2, which you've done. Then you have to summon a revenant, which I haven't seen you do, but presume you might be doing it this turn. But yeah, you need to get a revenant. And then this guy is going to spam out all of your stuff. And then once you get it, you have access to Oni Shugo and Dione. So Oni... Wait, did I get... Oh, I got rid of my filter here. Jomon. Okay, so we have the Oni Shugo and we have the Dione. Okay, so these are the guys. Now, Contact Dione takes 45 gems, and you have to get Death 4, which, let's just be honest about it, there's not going to be an easy way for you to get Death 4 very, very soon, I don't think. And we're going to get these guys for very specific reasons. I don't think using these guys as super combatants, I think, especially with the death income you have, like, this is a pipe dream, like a distant pipe dream. If you had a good death income, like, yeah, hell yeah. Oni Shugo, on the other hand, have a very important job. One is you can... one thing they can do is they can do Wailing Winds and Wind of Death. Or just mostly Wailing Winds, so that's huge. That's the main reason you want to get them. Having death income is also good in general, but I think, and then these guys are also Oni summoners, so having these guys, you could, if you had a good death income, you could make an Oni pit, but you don't have a good death income, so you won't. Also, these guys cost no upkeep. These guys do. So I would take the Dione, I would put it in my Pipe Dream bucket, and for this game I would say, maybe I can get some Oni Shugo. That would be nice, because then I can add Wailing Winds, which is going to make my armies way stronger. And the other reason why you want to get these guys, I think, instead of Dione, is you're going to have to roll quite a few times to get the right path. With Dione, you have more randoms to pick from, so you have a lower chance of getting an heir, and they cost a lot more. Like, these guys cost 20 gems, but Dione costs 45, and they cost gold. So at some point, I'm not saying Dione are bad. I obviously like Dione. They're also a great way to get high in death, because you can get a death 4, which is pretty sick. So at some point, if you have a good death income, you could totally think about, like, late game getting Dione. But I think for the time being, the goal would be Oni Shugo. So I would probably get 1 or 2 Revenants. You don't need more than that. Get them spamming out. And I'd be tactful about it. Like, don't do it everywhere. If you think it's already been side searched by, like, the nation you conquered, then maybe you don't need to do it. Like, you have Phalegra. Phalegra probably searched for death. Just guessing. I mean, it depends, obviously, if he got Tyrants out before you conquered him. But assuming he did, he's probably side searched for death. So yeah, you want to spam out Dark Knowledge with your Revenants, and at some point, hopefully, your death income will be, like, right now you basically, you get one or 2 Revenant, you get 1 Revenant, and then this guy and your Revenant, they can just sit there and spam out 2 Dark Knowledges every turn, and in, 10 turns, you'll have 20 provinces site searched, right? Which is basically going to be most of your empire, especially if you do it smart. At that point in time, maybe you have 15 or 20 death income. Now it's time to go ahead and do Oni Shugo. Oni Shugo are not a key part of the strategy, but having access to Wailing Winds is pretty important. How do you do Wailing Winds? Well, Wailing Winds, you're going to have it researched pretty soon because it was high on our little priority list. You need to be death 3 to cast it. You can't cast it death 2. But an Oni Shugo with the Skull Staff can cast it. So that's basically the ticket. The alternative to doing that is you plug them into a communion with a communion master little thing. The other thing that we'll say, and this is an argument for getting Revenants now rather than later, is if you get a Revenant now, you can give them the, whatchamacallit, the Master Matrix, so he becomes a Communion Master, and you can put him in your Communions for your big Doom stacks rolling around, and basically he can do life after death, which is going to be pretty nice. And if you lose mages, you'll get them back as little lifeless dudes, which is kind of good. It can definitely change the outcome of a fight. So I would say that is a go-do. Like, maybe do that for 1 or 2 of your big stacks, but you're not going to have a ton of them. But it's a way before, 15 turns from now to actually use your death gems for something that's going to give you power rather than just only do death gem eco. Though there's definitely an argument to be made just for doing death gem eco. So that is that. Yeah. The final thing that I think we need to talk about, because I think we talked about most of the stuff, obviously finish site searching, but you're not doing a bad job, except in death. And that's for kind of obvious reasons. But don't finish site searching, and yeah. Oh, blood, you also have 50 blood slaves. You should empower somebody in blood. What I would recommend... I already checked the mat for BAPs. We didn't find bats. So, yeah, just pick whoever and empower them. Later, you're going to want to empower probably an Onishugo in blood. And you may... I'm not even sure which random you would want. Maybe the Earth random? That way you can make bloodstones if you want to. And you've already got this guy. So, empower him in a path this guy doesn't have. Yeah. So I think the final topics, and this one I don't really have an answer on, but I think it's something for you to think over. Oh, wait, there's a few other things we got to talk about. One is the Daitango, so you have them. These guys are actually really important because, and it's actually for the Agartha War, is you need mass flight. Because the other final strategy Agartha could do is they can earthquake you. And with a bunch of shitty mages with low defense and no protection, they're going to die in droves to earthquake. The only terribly reliable way to cast mass flight before earthquake, because they have the same cast time, is you have to make this and put them on him. Okay? So get the astral boosters, get the water boosters, poop out a Crown of the Magi, and with your armies attacking Agartha, you're going to need a Daitango doing mass flight. Also going to be good for storming forts, also going to be good for dealing with basically all the archers. You are going to want to make sure you get the weapons of sharpness and strength of giants, all that stuff out very quickly in the fight, because on like turn 3 they're going to be gone. And the other thing to think about is you want to have the numbers advantage when you do mass flight. And then the other thing to think about is that when you do mass flight, archers are much less valuable in a mass flight type of situation. And obviously you can't do mass flight at the same time as you do storm. A trick, though, is if you just want to dodge earthquake, but you don't want your guys running in with flight, is you can do storm and then mass flight. Or you do mass flight, you can do them kind of at, how would you do it? Yeah, you could do them in any order. You would want to do mass flight first, just in the sense that you want to block earthquake. But if your guys are on hold and attack, and both of them are off before the hold and attack command fires, then nobody's going to go flying over to the enemy side. And if you have storm and mass flight up, you will dodge earthquakes, I believe. And again, on any of these things I can be wrong, because like some of these things I've just heard people talk about. I haven't actually done them myself. But yeah, you should dodge earthquake, but your guys will not run forward with that. So anyway, that's the thing you can do. But you have to be very cognizant of earthquake, I think, with your mage core. So that's, I think, the main reason you would want to get Daitango, because things like fog warriors and stuff you can do on your communion. Like, you don't need... Where's your... Any of your air randoms can do it in your communions. So, there's that. The other nice thing, the other argument to be made for Demon Banes, which is another reason why it's really sad your water income sucks, is that it's going to be good even on your communion slaves, because getting their HP above 10, like to 11, is going to allow them to regen more if they end up being, very light turbo communions. So anyway, it's basically going to make regen twice as effective. And they're not going to die to flames from the sky. So you've site searched it pretty good. I would take all your 1s and site search it again, and I would site search everything else for 3. Yeah, feels bad, man. But I think that's a pretty important part. So anyway, yeah, that's an important special consideration for dealing with these humans. Now, the final thing we're going to talk about, then we're going to end the video, is your own assassin cancer, because you can do it yourself. Now, the thing is, these are really cheap. You can ship them out. They can jump over fort walls. They will have if you just spam them out in horrendous quantities, they will have a decent chance of killing an unbodyguarded mage. But if there's a mage with bodyguards, they will probably kill the assassin. And you've kind of wasted your time when you could have just killed them normally with your pretty good army. So what I would... Let's take a look at what gear you get. Now, the thing is, what gear you get is actually going to be based off of what gems are cheap for you in this game and what are expensive. So like, we'd be like, oh, hey, you should have bottled water assassins. No, we shouldn't. Oh, you should do acorn assassins. No, we shouldn't. What are the things that we can do? That is a good question. And I am not actually sure. Let's take a look. You don't have death either. God, all the things that give you retinue units, you don't really have them. I guess sight frequency is kind of low in late game. Okay, dude. Look, you don't have any of the good assassination items. The only thing I think you could do is, like, put a frostbrand and pray to Jesus, but that's not a good plan. Your best plan is probably unkitted and just hope they get lucky if you do it at this point. And it's probably worth having some to guard and, like, maybe to catch raiders, but I don't know. I think the way I would look at assassins for you is, like, if you had good gym income, then you could use these guys really effectively. But because you don't, you can't. That's kind of it. Yeah, that's kind of where you are. So you've site searched pretty good. I think you have 2 wars that you need to be in. One war is a war with Agartha, and the other war is to finish site searching. My target would be, unless you're pretty sure it's been site searched. Like if you're at Calum, you don't really need to site search for air around here. Like you're pretty sure they've done it. But aside from that, if you're not completely sure, I would try to get almost everything site searched that you can while not compromising the war with Agartha. Like, you have a ton of think about it this way. You have a ton of mages sitting around researching. How much more research do you really need? And this is a mistake I make all the time, but this is what research you need, right? This is going to get you through your war with Agartha. How long is it going to take you to get it? Well, this is going to take you 4 turns, and then this is going to take you combined like 3 more turns. Maybe 4. So like in 8 turns, you can be totally done. You'll be ready to fight in 4 turns with Agartha. You do not need this to fight with Agartha. This is like a luxury, but in 4 turns, you'll be ready. So your research isn't phenomenal. Getting Army of Gold and stuff would be nice, but it's not required. And going for Dione, or why did you even want to go for 7? Because I think that was your first priority. I don't even know who that is. Must be pretty good if it's 28. Or were you going for Dione? Yama no Kami? One second. National only. Okay, you get this guy. Yeah, this guy, like, you... yeah. You don't need him. Like, you can do all this stuff in your communion. Yeah. Just not needed. So, does he shape change or something? He's assassin resistant because he gets wolves. That's nice. He's a lot of HP. It's good. I like it. I mean, it's the cost of of Troll King, and you get arguably a better unit. Foreign Magic Boost 1, I don't know how that works, but... Anyway. I'm assuming you're going Conjuration for Dione. So, yeah, no. This is what you need, I think, in my opinion. There's some other things that are actually going to be pretty nice, like getting Charm would be good on your advanced and cast spellcasters. That might end up netting you an Oracle or two. But yeah, I think that'll do it. What else? I think that's it. Late game, you can do assassin stuff with all the retinue items if you get the if you get the income. And the thing for assassins is you want to have like 20 or 30 of them in one tile and just kill all the commanders for an army, which is something you should aim to do, but maybe in like 20 turns or 15 turns. And I haven't even talked about thrones really. I don't think you have any thrones that are currently under your control. So you have some that you're working on, like this one. I wouldn't worry about thrones yet. I mean, killing Agartha, you probably don't want to fight a nation that has no thrones, but killing Agartha, you're going to get two. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful. It's kind of been fun to look at, and yeah, thanks, dude. Take care.